Russia will help Abkhazia and South Ossetia to provide safety at their borders. The presidents of the three countries have signed the security agreements in Moscow. Russia recognized the states as independent following Georgia's attack on the south capital Sinval last week. Maria Fenoshina has been following the meeting at the Kremlin, and we can now cross to her live. Maria, can you tell us more about this border cooperation agreement? What's it all about?
Well, Bill, President Dmitry Medvedev, Russia's President Dmitry Medvedev says that today's agreement is a response to Georgia's continuing militarization and an ongoing concentration of Georgian troops, police forces and machinery along its border with South Ossetia and Abkhazia. This document stipulates that Russia will help both Caucasus republics protect their borders and preparing their national border forces and providing them with all necessary equipment and all necessary military staff, and it also pledges financial support, of course. Say that the signing comes just days before NATO military exercises which are expected to take place in Georgia, or as Moscow say, in Russia's backyard. The drills which Russia say is something provocative and also say may spark Georgia's aggression. Let's now listen to what Russia's President Dmitry Medvedev has to say about that.
We regard any actions that Tbilisi could see as building up Georgia's military as a violation of the 6 principles of solving the conflict that were developed in August. So the military exercises planned by NATO in Georgia are a pure provocation, although our Western colleagues are trying to convince us otherwise.
Russia's military report that over the past month, Georgia has several times violated the border regime with South Ossetia and Abkhazia, and they also report several provocative actions from the Georgian side. Russia say that peacekeeping forces have left the region. The situation there remains very tense, something Russia is very concerned about. Here's the report of my colleague Denis Bolosky working in the region. Let's take a look.
This checkpoint in Gali came under fire several weeks ago. Abkhazian border patrolmen blame Georgian militants for the shelling. They say the group illegally crossed the border at night and launched a sneak attack.
In the morning we walked around and found RPG shells at the bus stop nearby.
Abkhazia declared independence from mainland Georgia in the early 90s. For more than 15 years it remained a frozen conflict zone. In 2008, after Georgia launched a military campaign against Tskhinval, Russia recognized South Ossetia and Abkhazia as independent states, signing treaties on diplomatic and military cooperation. And following separate terrorist attacks in the capital Sukhum last year, Abkhazian officials ordered the border with Georgia to be blocked, blaming Tbilisi for organizing them. The situation at the checkpoint in Gali remains tense. But locals say you can get into Georgia, just not for sightseeing.
Despite recent incidents, the border remains open for those traveling for humanitarian reasons, such as family events and medical emergencies. Many locals have relatives in Georgia, so they just have to cross this bridge every once in a while.
The Gali district is the only territory of Abkhazia where ethnic Georgians are a majority. Over 60,000 refugees returned to the region in recent years. Avtandil Ezukbaya is the headmaster of the Gali school. His wife Leah recently gave birth to their son Luka. The family hopes to share the good news with their relatives in mainland Georgia.
After the war, the ties were broken, but not all ties. I'm still in touch with my relatives, but I want to see them more often. Politics are politics, but I would like to restore all human ties.
Officials in Gali say they'd be glad to make the border more open for civilians and harder for criminals to cross, but it can't be done without Russia's help. A deal to allow both sides to modernize their checkpoints is a long-awaited agreement.
During the last 17 years, there were attacks every day, and the district is treated like air and water, and we've been waiting for the treaty for a very long time.
It's expected that Russia will provide training for Abkhazian officers and the latest technology for the checkpoints, and that, in turn, may help minimize the terrorist threat, making life in Gali safer and more peaceful. RT Abkhazia.
I have to say that today's agreement is just one of a series of documents signed between Russia and Abkhazia and Russia and South Ossetia aimed at strengthening their strategic, military and diplomatic cooperation and coordination. And Russia's President Dmitry Medvedev says it will not only help both Caucasus republics protect their borders, but it will also help maintain stability in the whole region. Back to the studio.
Information. Thanks very much indeed for that from central Moscow. And for more on this, I'm now joined in the studio by Roland Oliphant. He's the political analyst from Russia Profile magazine. Roland, let's talk about this border control agreement. Will this actually help people in South Ossetia and Abkhazia feel safer and be safer?
I'm not a person in Abkhazia. I'm going to feel safer. Russian troops could stabilize the situation. They could aggravate the situation depending on how they behave. And in a situation like this, I really want to wait and see what happens when they arrive.
Is there not an element of provocation from both sides? Because there is a build-up of Georgian troops as well along the borderline too, and then perhaps we might see another build-up of troops from Russia.
I mean, you can tell what the Georgians are going to be saying about this. They're going to be saying this is a provocation from the Abkhazians are saying it's a provocation from Georgia. This is why I really don't want to say whether this is going to make anyone safer at all. The danger in situations like this is always that the more troops you put into an area, the less it stabilizes it, the more tension it creates.
Well, here we have two republics who are independent, regarded as independent by Russia, so in effect they should be able to stand on their own 2 feet. Just how far Moscow go to further the stabilization of that area? Just how much more would Moscow do you think?
It really depends on what you mean by stabilization. If you mean keeping the Georgians out of South Ossetia and Abkhazia and doing whatever they have to do, it's actually a very long, very thankless task. It takes a huge amount of money and it takes decades. So there's two things here.
Well, leaving aside Georgian troops, where else is the threat coming from? We had a report there referring to Georgian militia, for example.
Lots of cross-border attacks. So we're told, and each side will point the finger at the other. I would be really cautious about accepting anything either side says at face value, to be absolutely frank. Could be militiamen, could be on either side stoking up tension, but at this stage, for an outside observer to say anything other than something isn't right is too dangerous.
Just finally, the meeting did also cover various other aspects too, not just on border control agreement with South Ossetia and Abkhazia. Talked about economy, for example. What is the future for these two very small parts of the world?
They can't really stand up without Moscow's help. I mean, they're quite different. You can't put Abkhazia and Ossetia in the same basket. Okay, Abkhazia has its own coastline. It's rather bigger. It's a lot more ethnically homogeneous. And it also has some wonderful, wonderful kind of tourist activity.
Exactly, I was going to say, yeah.
It has tourism, hazelnuts and mandarins, really. That's something. So economically, Abkhazia is in rather a better position, but all that trade is with Russia. As far as South Ossetia is concerned, it doesn't have that kind of independence, and it's entirely dependent on Russia.
Roland, that's as far as we can go there for the moment. Thanks very much indeed. Good to hear from you. Thanks for joining us here on RT.